Good evening everyone, this is M. Shanae for Hi-Fi and the Lowlight, and I'm very excited for tonight's video. I have two products that I want to talk about. One is the Fostex HPA4BL. Not a very impressive unit, cost right at about $450, and it was something that I was to review in addition to a headphone that I received. However, what I am more excited to talk about is the JDS Labs ATOM. This is their new solid state. So I don't typically do head-to-head comparison videos with new products. I usually like to do a review first and then bring in a direct comparison video later. But here's the problem that I had. The Fostex unit does not sound very good in my system, and it is very, very weak. It has a very low output. So as I started my review, I was finding that it just didn't have the power to handle all of my music collection with what I would consider to be a reasonable variety or assortment of headphones. So this got me thinking. This is a $450 unit that is not at all competitive, not at all enjoyable. You know, how do I drive that point home? Well, again, I happen to have the JDS Labs ATOM. I also happen to have the LDAC, which I use in my speaker system, so I thought, why not compare the $450 all-in-one to the separate $350 stack? I do think that the JDS team do have a standard for how good a $99 solid state can sound. And I think that in conjunction with the LDAC, they really set the standard for what an all-in-one should be right around that $300 price point. So again, to drive that point home, I want to compare a fully balanced all-in-one to a purely single-ended separate component system. So again, this is the Fostex unit. I do want to talk about the features between each, because features are important when it comes to a full system. With the HPA4BL, I do have a 4-pin XLR out, so it is fully balanced. On the front, I have switches for the digital inputs as well as gain and then filters, plus the volume knob. On the back, I have a single set of line level RCA outputs, or a pair of them. I have the optical in, I have the optical out, and then I have USB in. Comparatively with the LDAC system, there is just one single-ended headphone jack on the front of the amplifier. Switching to the back, the DAC has a single RCA line level out, but the amplifier also has a set of pre-outs. So I can feed the output from the DAC into the amp, feed the output of the amp into a set of active monitors. So that, I think, certainly brings some value to the stack. Something different that you guys may also notice is I have 3 digital inputs on the LDAC: USB, coax, and optical. I myself primarily use coax in all of my systems. Many of you may not, many of you may be just using USB, but I think having the option of coax input is important, as some of you may find that there are situations where you need it. So overall, in terms of features, I do think that the ATOM and LDAC system are going to be obviously a better value. You have an additional digital input that may be of some use to you guys, but most importantly, or more importantly, the amp itself does feature those pre-outs. So you can actually hook up active monitors to this system. Now, obviously, more important than the features are how does each one sound? Well, to determine how they sounded, I actually listened with 3 different headphones. I listened with my vintage AKG K240M, I listened with the Dac+Atom Blue, and of course, I had to listen with my Sennheiser HD800. Now, the Dac+Atom Blue is purely single-ended. I did not have a balance cable for it. However, my AKG K240 and my HD800 are fully balanced. And what I found that was concerning again with the Fostex was it was underpowered. The balanced output of the Fostex unit was in some cases 3 to 4 decibels quieter than that of the single-ended output on the ATOM. The only time that they were comparable, or that they were very close, was with the HD800. The HD800 has an impedance of 300 ohms, and I found that the balanced output of the Fostex was like maybe 0.2 or 0.3 decibels quieter than the single-ended output of the ATOM. Otherwise, the balanced output of the Fostex unit was 3 to 4 decibels quieter than the single-ended output of the ATOM. Now, those measurements were with the Dac+Atom Blue as well as the AKG K240M. Now, what's interesting is with the K240M, I was able to use high gain on both units, and of course the high gain on the ATOM was again about 3 to 4 decibels louder. Now, What's interesting, I required high gain on the Fostex to get the Dac+Atom Blue to a listenable level. But on the Atom, I was able to use low gain. And low gain on the Atom was a decibel quieter than high gain on the Fostex. But again, here's where it gets interesting. High gain on the Atom with the Dac+Atom Blue was about 9 decibels louder than high gain on the Fostex. So for the most part, I felt that the Fostex was simply underpowered. In fact, it might be one of the weakest or least powerful amplifiers that I've heard to date. Almost everything in my collection can get all of my music to what I would consider a listenable level. Right? And how do we get volume? For the most part, voltage is what will help that driver get loud. And almost all the amplifiers and DAC amps in my collection are able to get me loud enough. You guys may mention that I had some complaints when using the Shanling M2S to drive my HE4XS. Yes, the M2S got to the very limit, the absolute bottom of what I would consider loud enough. But this was a portable digital audio player. For a desktop product to have the same output in terms of quantity as a portable, entry-level digital audio player, I just felt that that was unacceptable. So again, the unit was very underpowered. Additionally, the 2 filters on the top, one of them I found to be a bit more clear, the other one I found to be a bit more pleasing. But in both cases, just the unit itself is noisy. So I did prefer to stick to the more clearer or more technical sounding filter. The other problem I had with the Fostex was in fact the gain. When I switched to high gain, I noticed that everything was a little bit noisier and there was a real lack of blackness or quiet during silence. If a passage of music had a silent part, you could audibly hear the noise of the Fostex unit. Now again, I did use USB into it, so maybe you guys can reason that my system was noisy or the room was noisy. But the problem is switching to the LDAC and the Atom, there was no such noise. Thus this leads me to believe that it was in fact the Fostex unit that is noisy. That's the problem. So just, I mean, the filters were audibly different, but it didn't really make a difference subjectively. The unit was noisy. It was hard to listen to it on high gain with my HD800. All right, as technical as that headphone is, as much as I enjoy that headphone, when I plugged it in to the Fostex HP4BL using the balanced output and using low gain, it was nothing memorable. You know, I enjoy the HD800. The HD800 is a headphone that I like listening to. So even out of a horrible system, I suppose that it was, you know, it wasn't unbearable, to say the least, but it wasn't memorable. Now again, switching to the JDS Labs system, the LDAC and the Atom, was memorable. In fact, I was very impressed with the clarity, the blackness, the sense of dynamics, the spatial, the accuracy, the positional cues that system brought to each of the headphones that I listened with. Now you guys may know that I typically do not like my HD800 with a solid state. I typically stick to tubes. However, in this case, I felt that the Atom was transparent enough that it, combined with the LDAC, made for a very, very natural, very dynamic, very detailed listen. Guys, I like the JDS Labs LDAC and Atom enough that I do believe that it is going to be my standard moving forward. Right? A $300 system should be able to compare to this at least. Now, you may be able to spend $250, you may be able to go up to $350, but $300 seems to be the median price. Now, if you purchase this stuff new, you're going to pay $350, but you're sometimes going to find that there are B-stock deals where you're going to pay less. You may also find a chance to buy secondhand. So, again, with that JDS Labs system, with the LDAC, with the Atom, everything was well-rounded. There was balance. Everything about the performance of that system was pleasing. Everything about the performance, the sound quality of the system, the build quality, the space it takes on my desk, the power output, everything on that was impressive, was memorable. Enough that, again, that I feel that it's a standard. And it frustrates me that there are products like the Fostex on the market. And I think it's only like 2 years old. It's not a fairly old product, but I still find it frustrating that a fully balanced desktop system cannot even compare to a single-ended one. So if you guys are thinking about getting the Fostex system, I would recommend that you pass on it. I think it's probably just going to be a waste of money. There are far better, just everything. There are much better purchases to make than getting the Fostex HPA4BL. please don't waste your money buying the unit. And if you are in the market for an entry-level system, of course, check out the JDS Labs, the LDAC, along with their Atom Amp. But always do your research and look at other options. Because I will say that the Atom is not perfect. Right? There are extreme cases where the Atom doesn't have as much headroom as I would like. Some of these extreme cases include driving my LCD2 with very quiet music or music that's mastered a little bit below average. I also found that in terms of detail, there are some more detailed systems that I've heard, but oftentimes those more detailed systems have trade-offs elsewhere. So again, guys, wrapping this up, the Fostex unit is not recommended. I am going to, of course, give a massive recommendation to both the JDS Labs ATOM as a $100 solid-state amp because it is phenomenal, as well as to the LDAC, which I've already recommended before. But again, in particular, this system, the pairing of the two was very impressive. One final thing before I go. Guys, I did feel that JDS Labs system, the LDAC with the ATOM, that single-ended performance was better than my own NFB10 ES2. Now you guys know that the Audio GD NFB10 ES2 is a fully balanced design, and when I switch over to that balanced output, yes, the NFB10 ES2 does bring better detail, does bring more dynamics, is overall more resolving. But for this combo to, again, compare and outclass the single-ended output of a $600 DAC amp is pretty good. For this system to be better, to be more powerful, more transparent, just audibly better than a $450 all-in-one fully balanced product is again impressive. So guys, I highly recommend that you check out the new JDS Labs, both their ATOM as well as their LDAC. As always, guys, please leave your questions below. I appreciate you for watching, and have a great night.